Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Bader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market. Hey friends, Jason here. In this episode, I had the opportunity to speak with Kevin Gammonley. He is the executive director for both the NBMDA and the NAFCD. So these are, very similar organizations. First one is building materials distributors. Second one is floor covering distributors. And as you'll hear through our episode, Kevin will talk about some of the other organizations that he has been the executive director for. And I really wanted to kind of showcase some of the things that he's done in working in a large management firm and how that dynamic works and what they can offer. But it's just kind of an interesting career focus. And a lot of times when you're the member of a trade association, you really don't know how the sausage gets made. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And so Kevin shares a little bit about that and kind of giving a familiarity there. And then one of the big overarching things we talked about is recruitment and how do we get new blood into the distribution arena and how do we expose ourselves to people coming out of school or really looking for that career and what an amazing career that distribution can be. So with that, I really hope you enjoy this episode. Kevin's been just a long-term supporter of my career, so it was great to learn his backstory and have him on the show. This episode is brought to you by Connected Peers, an online peer collaboration platform for distribution professionals. Let's face it, most managers don't have the opportunity to speak with their industry peers about common challenges in their departments. Sure, they might see each other at an annual conference, but that hardly provides any real relationship building or continuity. What if there was a forum to solve challenges with those in your same role? Well, now there is. The concept is simple. Purchasing managers meeting with purchasing managers, training managers meeting with training managers, marketing managers meeting with marketing managers. You get the idea. There are 10 unique role-based communities to choose from. These are monthly, facilitated meetings, all via Zoom. Ask questions and receive feedback from people who understand the challenges of your position. Isn't it time that you quit going it alone? To learn more and find your peers, visit us at www.connectedpeers.com. Well, hey, Kevin, welcome to Distribution Talk. So good to see your face again, and thanks for taking the time to be with me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, since my, from my consulting career, 20 years, I mean, shoot, you and I have crossed paths so many different times. I mean, it's just, I'm really glad to get a chance to really, talk a little bit more about you, find out a little bit more about you and your background.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Appreciate it.
With that being said, let's kind of start in, let's do a little history lesson. Let's talk a little bit about how you got into association management. I mean, did it find you or did you find it? Or how did you get involved in the distribution side of that big practice? So if you wouldn't mind, just share a little bit about your background.
Yeah, for sure. Like most people in the association management profession, I kind of fell into it. I was not seeking it out. In fact, after college, I worked for a couple of construction equipment and supply manufacturers in a marketing role. And I determined that that was kind of an industry that I wanted to stay in.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it was time to find a new position, I was working with a recruiter. She actually introduced me to a position she was trying to fill, which was with the North American Building Material Distribution Association.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea what the association part of that was, but the building material side was the appealing thing initially. And so as I did some homework and saw a roster of their members at the time, it really clicked that this was of interest to me because it was the types of companies that I kind of saw myself ultimately someday maybe working for.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly the manufacturers that were familiar to me. The distributor side of the membership base, I didn't know anything about and didn't even really know at the time what a wholesale distributor was. And so I went through the process and ended up becoming that association's membership manager at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they were a self-managed association with an office in suburban Chicago with about 10 staff. The executive director at the time who hired me had been there for 25 plus years. It was a very respected organization that had been around for a long time. And so I was kind of off and running on primarily focused on membership recruitment, membership orientation, engagement, renewals, that kind of stuff. And I determined quickly I kind of had a knack for that kind of work.
Mm-hmm.
I liked it. I liked the people I was interacting with. Again, I saw it as a stepping stone to network with some of these member companies that ultimately, might become my next, step in my profession, career. And so as things developed, I didn't see myself, staying in a small office like that for too long.
Mm-hmm.
And, as fate would have it, in less than a year in that role, the volunteer board of directors of that association actually forced that long-term executive director out.
Okay.
He was basically coasting, and they looked at a couple of different models,
Mm-hmm.
including the association management company model.
Yeah. Yeah.
Passed on that at the time, and instead pursued a merger with a large trade association in our space
Mm.
that we interacted with and competed with. And so
Mm-hmm.
those merger discussions ended up taking almost a year. The
Mm-hmm.
expectation was that that merger would be finalized. And so the volunteer leaders of that association worked closely with me to kind of keep me in place through that kind of turbulent time.
Yeah.
A local past president of the association kind of provided oversight of our office since we were kind of leaderless.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
they asked me to play a bigger role in kind of some staff management duties. And
Mm-hmm.
so I decided, because of some of the volunteers that I really liked and kind of believed in, they assured me that it was going to be good in the long run for me, that I stuck it out. And
Yeah.
so my expectation was that I was going to be shifting over to this other office. We
Mm-hmm.
would become staff of this larger association, and I would have a new executive director that I would be reporting up to.
Mm-hmm.
Literally in the 12th hours of the process, the merger agreement fell apart.
Oh no. Yeah.
Our office had like 3 weeks left of our lease because we were
Oh,
we were expecting to be moving.
sure.
And so our association board of directors had a scramble, and they went back and looked at the association management company model,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
is where one company manages multiple associations
Right.
kind of under their roof and provides a roster of services to those organizations. And so they went back and talked to a company called Smithbucklin,
Yeah.
which is actually the largest association management company in the country, based in downtown Chicago. And they put an agreement together very quickly. And I believe still the fastest transition in Smithbucklin's history
Yeah.
to basically close down an office, shift a portion of the staff over to their offices, and have it all done and be up and running, within 3 weeks, because we had to be out of that space. And I
Yeah.
was one of 4 staff members that then shifted from working in this small 10-person office to moving to downtown Chicago and working for a 500 plus employee company,
Yeah.
that was very diverse and, kind of a leader in association management with an extensive roster of associations that they managed. And so that association of mine, NBMDA, the Building Material Distributor Association,
Yeah.
became a new client of Smithbucklin. I came in as, again, the membership manager.
Mm-hmm.
And then within a year at Smithbucklin, I was elevated to the executive director role. And so, my plans of potentially, go in a different direction just changed,
Sure.
because I was
Yeah.
now in a very dynamic company that had a lot of career opportunities for me. And so
Sure.
I
Sure.
continued, and to this day, I still manage that same association. But over the years, I have played a role with many different associations,
Mm-hmm.
and including, serving as the exec director of multiple groups simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a distributor practice within Smithbucklin. And so over the years, I got to play a role in many of the other distributor associations that we manage,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually became the exec director of what used to be called the International Hardware Distributors
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Association,
Yeah.
that eventually was rolled under my building material group. I was the exec director of the National Fastener Distributors
Mm-hmm.
Association, and FDA.
I remember that. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I did 8 years as the exec director of the National Paper Trade Association,
Yeah. Yeah.
NPTA. And so I got really immersed in distributor associations, all like while keeping my kind of anchor client NBMDA. And so I determined distributor associations were a good fit for me.
Yeah.
Really liked the people, the volunteers. I told many young people in our management company, hey, we manage a lot of different groups, but you might want to seek out one of these distributor groups because they are really good, fun people,
Yeah.
to work with. And it's proven to be a kind of a great move on my part because I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've touched a lot of different distributor groups. And then over the years, I sought out opportunities just to interact with executive directors, that were running distributor associations in a lot of different verticals. So that's how I fell into association management, was not seeking it out, really
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
building material side of things. And, just it worked out for me.
I think it's an interesting profession that is not well known. I mean, I think that's something, a lot of folks don't know. I mean, it's not like you go to college and, somebody's going to say, hey, why don't you take a look at association management? And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is discussed maybe in the PR journal, PR side, marketing or something like that. But outside of the East Coast, I don't think it's really well known as a profession.
Absolutely
Yeah.
not. No. In fact, after all these years, I'm not sure my kids or my wife could really explain what I do. And so, they know little pieces of it. And so I've had to explain, to so many people as
Yeah.
when they ask you kind of what do you do? And most people do not have any clue that it
Hmm.
exists. But once you kind of walk them through, I always ask them, well, what profession are you in? Do you belong to some, organization, a professional
Yeah.
society, or a trade association related to your, line of work?
Hmm.
And they say yes. I go, do you go to events, related to that group? And I'm like, all those people behind the scenes doing that work, putting on those
That's me. Yeah,
conferences.
that's what I do.
And then people start to connect the dots and be like,
Sure,
oh, yeah,
sure.
because it is kind of behind the scenes. Certainly in our model of association management company, our brand is totally in the background. So
Yeah.
for years, members of NBMDA just assumed I was a direct employee of the association, which at
Mhm.
one point I was. But, when it changed, no one would have known the difference. And so we are never putting the management company out front
Right.
and, by design. And so unless you become a volunteer leader and move up, and join like a board of directors,
Sure.
then you start getting some insight into kind of what goes on behind the scenes. And I see it all the time when they come to our office for the first time as a brand new NBeam Day member of the board of directors. They're amazed kind of behind the scenes and then the extensive staff and the expertise we have.
Coming up to the building itself is imposing. I
Yeah.
mean, this is a seriously imposing this when I came up to visit you, years ago, I was like, "Wow, okay, this is a big, big place here."
Yeah, and so a volunteer director, a lot of times I'll be like, "How do we, as a, like NBMDA, afford to have this office here?" And I'm like, "Well, it's a shared office space,"
Yes,
and
yeah,
and
yeah,
so and then they kind of again start to put the dots together. But certainly, it gives them a heightened level of comfort as a volunteer leader. That there is a lot of resources and expertise behind the scenes
yeah,
that they are not out there, kind of on their own, and so
yeah.
it works very well. That type of model.
Yeah, I mean, it's really kind of been fascinating for me over the years, because again, I didn't have really an understanding either until I came over to this side of the fence. And again, the association that I grew up in and became volunteer leader in, we were, a self-managed organization. So I did not have the exposure to the big, to the Taj Mahal stuff. That just wasn't part of the deal. And so it is fascinating. And yeah, the reason I ask this is I think it's an interesting career path. I'd love to see more young communications people and things like of that nature take a serious look at the there are some really great opportunities in these organizations. I know that some people have started with a management company like Smithbucklin, I think, like a Fernley and Fernley or something like that, and then been recruited to manage, a self-managed organization. There's just a lot of different variables there.
Absolutely. A lot of different paths someone can take because there's obviously a lot of different roles within association management. So
Yeah.
once a young person can kind of figure out, what parts of it they like, whether it's the event planning side, the marketing side, the
Hmm.
financial side, kind of the research data side, there's so many different variables that you could ultimately decide to kind of focus your career path on because it's varied. We do so many different things over the course of a year. And so I'm speaking, from personal experience because I convinced my youngest daughter when she graduated from college a couple years ago to go into association management. So she is
nice. Oh, excellent.
just getting a taste for it, and now can kind of better understand what her dad's doing
What
all
dad
these
did for a
years.
living, right? Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No,
Yeah,
that's really great. And I like to see that, generational, follow, and you can kind of guide her, along the way. And no, that's terrific, Kevin. One of the things that I wanted to kind of dive into and ask you a little bit about is one of the big topics that all distributor companies and associations, again, supporting those companies is really driving that new, fresh ideas, but new blood into the organization. This has been a struggle, distribution, again, like association management, doesn't have a great PR department. They just don't, they don't share how great these careers can be. And I think that it's just, it's a shame because the people that that you and I have met over the years, these not only volunteer leaders, but even different members, these are pretty great people to work for. They're just pretty nice folks, they
yeah,
don't churn
absolutely.
and burn. I mean, they take care of folks, and I think there's where the big challenge is how do we tell the tale? Hey, you really should take a look at these companies. I mean, they may look a little dirty on the surface, they might not be as pretty as some opportunities out there, but these are great opportunities for people.
For sure. And I've been out there preaching and telling young people that I know, and I have been pretty successful in the last several years because one of my sons now works in distribution.
Oh, good. You're just using the family to do it. Yeah, you're just good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't know anything about it, obviously, and so I just started feeding him information, leading him to websites and some of my member companies, just so he understood kind of
Mhm.
what they do. And right away, it kind of clicked that hey, this looks interesting. But he would have never just ran across it on his own.
Right.
So it definitely requires someone to put it on a young person's radar. I'm always telling people, when you're driving down the highway and, you don't really aren't paying attention to those trucks going past you, but
Mhm.
I see all my member companies all the time out there, you know,
Constantly. Yeah.
but the average person has no idea what those company brands, represent because they're in most cases, they're not, consumer facing brands. And so distribution is a bit hidden, from the radar of most young people. And so, yeah, I have my son working in it. Now I have two of his friends working for a local NBMDA member here in Chicago. And so I keep telling my board of directors I'm doing my part, but we need a much bigger voice.
Need a few more people preaching out there to the
Yeah.
masses. So
So
yeah.
it's a great career opportunity for people because obviously you can go down the sales marketing route, you can go
Yeah.
into operations. There's so much there. And like you said, the people running distributorships are great people. It's the reason
Mhm.
why I've stayed in this role is
Right.
I've got to interact with these business owners over the length of my career and they're just great people to be, not only working for, but just hanging out with because they've got great people skills, they got great leadership skills, and they're very innovative.
Mhm.
As you know, every distributor can kind of go to market different ways and
Sure.
create their own path. So from a marketing perspective, I'm always very intrigued just to watch how different member companies of my association, have positioned themselves in the
Mhm.
marketplace,
Mhm.
the branding that they do or don't do, or some of them like to fly under the radar.
Mhm.
Some of them are getting much more sophisticated with marketing nowadays, but there's not one clear model, that works for everyone. And so I'm always telling young people it's very dynamic and,
Yeah.
find a channel, of some products that may interest you and take a closer look at it.
I know that there are some companies, and maybe the ones, larger entities who can afford it, have been very active in going to career fairs of some of the distribution schools, like the traditional ones like A&M and Purdue and whatnot. My younger brother's company, the one I grew up in, I mean, they have a very serious program, of visiting all of these career fairs, and they've developed a leadership track to recruit young people. And so I'd love to see distributors. I know he's going to kill me for this, but I'd love to see other distributors really follow that path and say, look, there are a lot of school fairs and things like that you can go out, but you have to craft your message. I mean, you really, and I know that the young lady who heads it up for my brother, she's on the road a lot. I mean, she is, and she's in these career fairs and they've got the booth up and they are pitching. I mean, just constantly selling how
Absolutely.
great, a wholesale distributor is, in these career fairs.
Yeah, I see that a lot. And obviously, part of the role of the association is to help our member companies, with those kinds of ideas
Yeah.
and kind of best practices, what is working for other distributors
Hmm.
out there, and kind of leading them to experiment, with different approaches, especially in this tougher, environment for recruiting
Yeah.
any employee, but especially young employees,
Hmm.
who don't know exactly what they want to do. That obviously these distributors have got to get more creative and
Hmm.
kind of innovative in how they go about recruiting. And so we're always looking for opportunities to kind of showcase
Hmm.
those success stories and align them with some potential partners that can kind of help them do some of that kind of activity.
So, yeah, I'm glad you were saying, yeah, you kind of brought that up. I guess my big question is really, what are the member expectations of you all? I mean, what are they asking you to specifically provide? I know that the value proposition has changed over the years, for the association, but what are they asking you to provide as far as this, recruiting and really getting good at recruiting?
Yeah, we've brought forth a number of things that have been resonating with our members. We have a very long and kind of strong partnership with an HR consulting firm
Okay.
that works with, small, mid-sized companies as kind of an extension of their HR department.
Hmm.
And they
Hmm.
do a lot in regards to recruiting. And so we've really leveraged them as one of our key partners, again, to educate and inform our members
Hmm.
on what is working out there nowadays. What kind of old practices do they need to leave behind? Creative ideas for,
Hmm. Hmm.
breaking through to new and different audiences that maybe they weren't attracting in the past,
Hmm.
those kinds of things. So we do a lot in that regard. We also have a pretty robust, because of the other thing is, what does it take for these companies from a compensation standpoint to be competitive?
Yeah.
Because obviously they are competing with all the other distributor verticals and all, a whole bunch of other different kind of service companies.
Sure.
And so we have been providing them more dynamic kind of compensation and benefits benchmarking data,
Yeah.
so they can
Nice.
make sure that their programs are competitive
Hmm.
and are including, especially on the benefit side, things that younger people are looking for. And again, to keep it fresh and different than maybe what they did in the past. And then once they've been successful and have young people in their organizations, they're really looking for us to provide education and training, around leadership and career development. And so we have done a lot in that regard, so that there are some turnkey, educational programs that distributors can easily tap into, that are affordable to put these young people through, so that they can, one, show that the company is really interested in investing in them from a retention standpoint, which, obviously most young people are very interested in.
Hmm.
And these distributors can do it in a way that they know is working, because all distributors, like within our association, are feeding their people into it. So there's an opportunity for these young people both to get educated, but also to begin to build their own, peer network of fellow distributors across the country, of people
Hmm.
at their level. And so we launched what we call an emerging distribution leader
Yep.
program a
Yeah.
couple years ago, that is proving to be very successful and perfectly timed, because it is exactly what our members were asking for and are in need of.
Hmm.
And then, as you're very familiar with, we've been longtime sponsors of a program called the University of Innovative Distribution,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
held each spring, in Indianapolis, in partnership with Purdue University. And that is just a great place to send young people,
Hmm.
to get that type of in-person training, because
Hmm.
then they can also see that they're part of not only the industry that the member company is involved in, but they're also part of this broader,
Yeah.
distribution sector,
Yeah.
and there's all these different verticals, and it gets people excited, that they are part of a bigger kind of piece of the, the business world and the economy, that at first they may not have even been familiar with.
Right. Definitely a behind the scenes industry, But then if you do go in an event like that, I mean, UID is obviously very near and dear to my heart as a distributor. I was a participant. I went down to back in the old days. It was University of Alabama Birmingham. So
Yeah, I
a little
remember
more
that.
Spartan type of accommodations compared to where they are today at JW Marriott. But no, I think you're absolutely correct. That you all of a sudden got this glimpse into you are part of a greater whole. That this is way bigger than just I sell, building materials, or I sell, floor covering, or something of that nature. This is a big, big deal, and I think that it's important. That's actually really one of the things that you all can do by being part of that, sponsoring group, the Association Education Alliance. Is that right? Yeah, Alliance. There is that you all can preach the message globally. You've got you've got more mouths to preach, and collectively you can talk about how do we reach that young person who is thinking about their career?
Absolutely. And my board of directors, my volunteer leaders are always asking me, well, what's going on in other verticals? How
Yes.
can how can we learn from other verticals? And so being part of these kind of multi distributor association entities,
Yeah.
provides me an opportunity, to tap into that. But it also provides
Hmm.
them, the opportunity to send their people to an event like UID to get that
Right.
exposure, to kind of the bigger distribution world beyond our specific channel. And so we as an association, have had great success with UID for now
Hmm.
20 plus years. We also do a version of it that we call UID in a day.
Yep.
That's the day leading up to our big annual convention in the fall, so
Hmm.
that we give our members an opportunity to give their younger, up and coming managers an opportunity to get a little abbreviated version
Hmm.
of UID in hopes that they would then consider sending them to the full UID the next spring. And that has proven, a great kind of marketing strategy.
Hmm.
And through this AEA group that owns UID, we do this program UID year round, where we are using and presenting UID speakers through a webinar series every year,
Hmm.
again, to offer another medium for our distributor members to expose their people, to this type of content, all kind of under that UID brand.
One of these days, Kevin, it's just kind of occurred to me that I really feel like I should have a show with a bunch of folks who have gone through this experience, because I know some participants go multiple years. If I remember right, there's a 3-year deal where you do get a
Yeah.
certificate if you do go 3 years.
Yeah, if you go to 3
Yeah.
UIDs, doesn't have to be consecutive, but at 3
Yeah.
overall, Purdue provides you a special certificate, from their distribution school for kind of achieving that number of CEUs.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we have a number of our members that send the same individual back to UID
Yep.
multiple times. One, because most of them love it, and that certificate is a nice thing to kind of work towards. And
Hmm.
it's a nice thing, a nice accomplishment for them to show that, they have made a commitment to distribution management and have immersed themselves in kind of the learnings and leading, thought leaders
Yeah.
in the space. And so it's been a great program. And
Yeah.
so, again, it's a program that my association could not pull off on our own. And so, if just from the practicality of feeding in with other associations, makes it worthwhile. But on top of it, then the actual attendees get such a worthwhile experience by getting exposed to that broader audience.
Yeah. Couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it was absolutely the very best educational experience I had in my distribution career. I mean, hands down. I mean, I'll tell everybody I run across that that's exactly, that's the place you go. But, I want to jump back for a second and kind of thinking about the AEA, the other peers that you have and that you've been exposed to. And you said early on that that was one of the kind of the big highlights is that, you had this opportunity not only to work with the Smithbucklin, universe, which you're kind of rare. You have that opportunity to have a lot of
Right.
different, really great association leaders, but then also to network with a lot of just distribution association executives. First of all, took on a leadership role this last year, I think. Why did you raise your hand? I mean, you could have just gone to the meetings and been a participant, but why did you raise your hand to be a volunteer leader for that organization?
Yeah, because 15 plus years ago, an executive director in the distribution world reached out to me and introduced me to this Association Education Alliance AEA,
Yeah.
and said, this is something that you might want to take a look at. And
Yeah.
of course, everyone's busy, and it's not like I was necessarily looking for more meetings to go to. But while I learn a lot from executive directors, like within our management company and in the industry that my clients operate in, I interact with a lot of exec directors, and there's always stuff to learn from them. But
Hmm.
when you zero in on executive directors that are running distributor oriented associations like mine, that networking just becomes that much richer because
Hmm.
they have an exact same profile, of a member that I do, just in the different vertical, and all the issues end up being, the same
Yep.
challenges, same trends. Of course, there's nuances for the channel, but all the overarching stuff is the same. And so there's so much we can learn, from each other by sharing what's working, what's not. And I was hooked, after going to that first meeting years ago,
Yeah.
that not only is this a great place for my professional development and meeting all these, really strong, successful executive directors, but this is extremely valuable for my, association clients that I serve, because I'm able to bring back not only ideas, which are hugely valuable unto
Hmm.
themselves, but this peer group, takes it a whole step further, that there's actually programs, that are being offered to me
Right.
that I can either opt in or opt out of, UID being the most recognized, but many other ones as well over the years,
Sure.
that I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I don't have to create something from scratch. I can quickly bring a new program to my menu of offerings at
Hmm.
low cost, fast speed, and most importantly, low
Hmm.
risk, because it's already been vetted, with some of my fellow AA members. And so people are bringing things that are working, for them, and that I can
Hmm.
tap into. I can tweak it, for my group, rebrand it for my group, and be off and running, and marketing it to my members. And so it's just been, so valuable that I rarely miss an AA meeting. And so it's basically the
Hmm.
same concept of, what we're telling our members, what I'm telling prospective members all the time for like
Yeah.
NBMDA or AMCD,
Yeah.
that, hey, you got to go, you got to show up, you got to go to meetings. One good idea, could be well worth, both the time you invested as well as the dues you pay to join, because those ideas can, be major, changes and have major positive impact to your organization. And I've seen that, within running my associations, that I've brought back such great ideas and been able to basically look really good to my volunteer board of directors, because I'm able to bring strong programs and services, that have proven to be, the right fit for
Yeah.
my group, because I'm pulling them from other distributor associations that have, kind of gone
Hmm.
before me and already worked out, some of the kinks of the program and had some lessons learned that I don't have to now have the same problems. And so you really can't put a
No.
price tag on that kind of
No,
stuff.
it's really the holy grail for an association is really, being able to get a lesser cost member benefit and something that's proven. I think that's the power. The other nice thing is, I've met a lot of the association executives in that group. And what I was always, impressed about is their willingness to share these ideas. Now, there are a few that keep things tight to the vest, and with all groups, that's what we get. But for the vast majority, they want to see you and your members succeed. And they're always willing to share, hey, this is really working for us. Why don't you all look at it?
I completely agree. I'm always amazed, that they basically tease some things up and be like, you can have it, you can have the marketing collateral that
Yeah.
goes with it. I'll introduce you, to the stakeholders, that we're
Yeah.
working with. Everything, is just kind of lined up, and you got to be at the meeting to
Right.
hear about it. You got to follow up with the specific exec director and say, hey, can I talk to you further about this? So there's definitely some work involved, but you definitely are at a huge advantage, not to have to think of these things on your own. I always say, beg, borrow, and steal
Sure.
what you can from others that have, that are further along, especially within a specific like program or topical area that maybe, you just don't have any experience or haven't done anything in yet, and you can get ramped up quickly.
Hmm.
Which is what it's all about, obviously, being able to bring things forward and bringing more value to my members. And so I've not only been a longtime participant, I've taken a leadership role in that group just because I want to make sure, there's ongoing, continuing, value that's being offered to young exec directors coming into
Mm-hmm.
the group or new people that are new to the distributor association world, because there obviously are some nuances to running these types of groups. And so while AEA, started really to focus on sharing information and content around
Mm-hmm.
education and training, we've really expanded that to include basically anything involved in association management. So we spend a lot of time talking about membership trends and
Yeah.
recruitment strategies and what kind of data and research you're providing your association,
Yep.
and of course anything to do with events. And so the biggest thing that a lot of people get out of AEA is speaker recommendations, because
Yep.
if a professional speaker gets a standing ovation at one distributor associations meeting, it tells me that they must have something pretty relevant to a distributor audience.
Right.
And so unless they have a bad day when I have them, I've significantly increased my odds of having a winner. And so I get a lot of our speaker recommendations from fellow AEA
Sure.
associations and all kinds of other, membership and dues strategies, things like that, that
Mm-hmm.
again are very specific to the distributor world that I can adapt and implement quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, the collaboration available. It's hard to imagine going at it on your own. You're subject to your own best ideas and maybe a couple that are picked up by your members, but that's it. Without getting involved with a great. In fact, as a member, or even a volunteer leader member, I would almost require that of the association executive that, hey, you've got to have a peer group that you work with too. You can't just be us. It's no, you got to get out there and you got to meet with your peers.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, no, I would definitely.
I preach that all the time internally with new executive directors at our company or just anyone I'm meeting and in the industries I work in, that there's organizations obviously in every space. You just got to go out and seek it out.
Mhm.
Some of them are very informal, where you're just meeting at like big trade shows or
Sure.
something, which I do with some groups. And but then some of them are highly organized, like this AAA
Mhm.
peer group,
Mhm.
which has taken the sharing to a whole nother level. But if you're not part of that, you definitely are
Yeah.
isolated and missing out.
Yeah, I would agree. On another subject here, you kind of have a big announcement here. You are hanging up the cleats after many, many years in this world.
Yes, it's very early. I made a
I know.
decision.
I was going to say you look pretty darn good, man. I don't see, I see a lot of association execs hanging on to the bitter end, but you decided to make a change early.
Yeah. So, again, I've been working with NBMDA for 33 years. I've been
Mm-hmm.
the exec director of NACD, the Floor Covering Distributor Association, for the last 10 years. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been at Smithbucklin now over 30 years. So I've had a really good run, been a great
Yeah.
experience. And, the question always is, when's the right time
Right.
to bow out? And I always wanted to do it kind of on my own terms. And we had a phenomenal NBU Day AMCD annual convention last fall. It was one of our best ever, highest attendance. Both the associations, recovering from the pandemic years, are
Yeah.
back at full strength, are financially healthy. And so it just was the right time. I became a grandpa twice in the last 8 months.
Oh, congratulations. All right.
And
Okay.
so, yeah, I was like, I think this is the right time. And so it is just being, communicated. So it's just kind of seeping out here in the coming weeks, that come the summer, I'll be wrapping it up.
Okay.
But of course, I'm looking at opportunities maybe to keep my fingers in
For
some
sure.
distribution, association management activities. Not sure exactly what that'll look like, but I'm open to it. So we'll keep some of that
Mm-hmm.
going. But yeah, looking forward to kind of a new phase of my
Sure.
life and doing some different things.
Well, you said it here first.
Breaking news.
And hopefully the audience hears that and they'll say, hey, we might have something for you here, Kevin. So on a personal note, I really appreciate, what you've done over the years that you and I have known each other, and really your support of my little company here, and all the things that you've done. So it's just absolutely been a pleasure. And I do wish you the best of luck on that, on your next phase here going forward.
Hey, I greatly appreciate that, Jason, and appreciate everything you've done for not only my members but for the overall distribution community. You've been a great, champion and expert that obviously a lot of us go to for information, advice, and obviously for training as well. So Greatly appreciate that.
You bet. It's been my pleasure. I look forward to the next time our paths cross.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
Take care. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider sharing with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast application. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by the brilliant team at the Creative Imposter Studios. This episode was brought to you by my company, the Distribution Team. We are a consulting services firm dedicated to helping wholesale distribution clients remove barriers to profitability, generate wealth, and achieve personal goals. To learn more about how we can help your company succeed, check us out at www.thedistributionteam.com.